set of canine tracks right here, flowing right at this trail we're snowshoeing down this morning. Deer track right there. Plenty of game coming down this trail for sure. The beauty of a track right there. I can zoom out on that a little bit. But you guys see that's a beauty. Look at the display. That coyote track. Wow, that's gorgeous. Nice big one. Deer track right here, and he's actually stepped in that deer track. Looks like he went up and came back. You got another track right over here going the opposite direction. There's a set of tracks. This set of tracks is going up. That set of tracks is coming back. Looks like he's wandered up this trail and back down. Be a good place to set a coyote trap, I'd say. Morning folks, Dave Canterbury at the Pathfinder School. What I wanted to do today was I wanted to discuss a couple quick lessons. The first one I want to show you, we're going to use a pair of U.S. Army issue Magnesium snowshoes. And I want to show you how to make a quick set of easy bindings using material you may already have in your pack. And then I also want to show you the ability to use those Magnesium snowshoes to help you effect ignition for fire in a wintertime situation. Stay with me guys and we'll get started right now. This is the past U.S. Army issue snowshoe. I'm not sure if they issue these anymore or not. You can find them at surplus stores and online places like eBay for 50 to 80 bucks in new unused condition. They will not come with any bindings, and this is just a piece of webbing material that I'm using for a binding in this shoe. The advantage to these, besides the fact that they are fairly inexpensive for a snowshoe, they've got a heavy, like an aircraft cable type webbing in them that's coated with some type of a plastic material that should last for a good long time, and the frame is made of pure magnesium. So if the frame is made of magnesium, that should give us something to help us in an emergency to effect ignition for fire, provided we have a ferrocerium rod. We're going to put that to the test today, but first what I want to show you is how to make a quick set of bindings out of material that you may already have in your pack that could be multifunctional for other things, but will work as a binding in an emergency as well. What we're going to do to make bindings for our snowshoes, I'll set this one aside and put my knees on it, keep from getting my knees too wet here. We're going to take a piece of 1-inch web strapping, and this is the same web strapping I carry in my pack for things like Roycroft pack frame straps, for a tump line device for pulling a travois. All those things this webbing can be used for, and it can be just tied together with some type of a fisherman's knot to extend the length of that cordage if you need to. And this is about 1.5 pulls of webbing. So it's probably pretty close to 10 feet. And you'll have to experiment with that to see what size you need. What I've done is divided this in half to make sure that I have the center point is where my toe is going to be in this webbing. Remember that the precedence of a snowshoe is that when your foot is in this snowshoe and you lift it off the ground, your foot pivots so the snowshoe lifts up every time you walk. And that's important to realize when we tie this binding. So we're going to need to come back behind this opening where our toe goes, and we'll just come all the way back here, right back behind that area, and we'll take our webbing, keeping it flat and straight, and we'll tuck it in here just like this and pull it back up through. And what that's going to do is that's going to give us a spot to put our toe. And then we'll try to make sure that we've got this evened up to begin with. When we pull it through, we want to make sure that we keep that strap pretty even. So that's how we're going to start out. Then we're going to simply stick our foot in here, leaving plenty of room again for our toe. We need some space there so that when this pivots, the snowshoe lifts up. Now we can't tie our foot down to this snowshoe because if we do that, it won't be able to pivot. So we can't tie it down back here. So we'll get this nice and snug and get our foot centered in it, and then we'll cross over the top like this. We'll pull that back behind our boot, just above our heel at the ankle, and come around for another wrap. And we'll wrap it as many times as it takes to use up our webbing. And then we'll simply tie a square knot in that webbing. Square knots are pretty easy to get undone, but they stay in pretty well. Now when we lift this up, we should be able to walk fairly easily, and the snowshoe should tilt every time, just like that. You see our heel comes off, and there's a pivot. So every time we lift this up, it's going to pivot off our foot. And that's what we need it to do. It needs to pivot down so the tail of that snowshoe is on the ground when we pick our foot up. There has to be a pivot point right there. That's important. That binding device, or that binding design, will stay on really, really well. If it loosens up on you a little bit over the trek, you can always stop and tie it back together again. So let's tie our other shoe on from the front so that you can see again what I did. I'm going to put my foot where I want it, giving myself plenty of space in the toe to be able to pivot here. Pull it down tight and cross it over my foot like this. Then pull it just above the heel and wrap it down tight. When I run out of webbing, I'll tie it off. Looks like I got another wrap to go there. And again, a square knot will hold that pretty well. I like to get that knot on the side of my foot if I can. But if I can't, it's on the front, that's okay too. If it's in the back, it becomes a real pain. So when we're done, this is what we have. I know I've been concentrating fairly heavily lately on fire, but because we're in a wintertime environment right now with heavy snows in southeast Ohio, I believe that fire is very important, and I need to hammer that home and show lots of different ways that you can affect ignition with fire. Morse Kahansky says that your ability to start fire basically on a moment's notice is oftentimes the difference between your survival and your death. Now we're talking about a bushcraft scenario here, so I don't have to have this fire right this very second. Obviously, I've got plenty of warm clothes. I'm not freezing, shivering, anything like that. I still have gross motor dexterity. There's no big hurry. So I can take the time at this point to practice different types of fire making. That gives me the advantage to teach different types of fire making in a more relaxed environment. What I like to do is I like to have some type of gauge when I'm building my fire. And your fire lay and the preparation of your material is oftentimes the most critical element to making a fire. Ignition is oftentimes not that difficult. Maintaining that fire, getting that fire to light and establish itself is oftentimes much more difficult. So I've got this bag that this tarp tent came in, and I use that for a gauge. If I've got that bag full of smalls, that's going to be good enough for my initial fire lay. Now, that's not my fuel. That is my kindling source to effectively make that fire. My ignition source and my tinder source are what I have to worry about next. And my tinder source, I usually like to use bark if I can find it. I still have a pretty good amount of tulip poplar bark here. Again, this stuff is still damp. I've never taken this stuff inside. I've never put it inside the fire to dry. I've just left it laying in that bag in the tarp tent everywhere we've been, so it's never really had the chance to dry out bone dry. It's not as damp as it was, but it's still cold to the touch. And if it's cold to the touch on your face, it's probably damp. So ignition of this material directly with a ferro rod is questionable. We're going to use magnesium from our snowshoes today to help ensure that we get ignition once we have a proper fire lay. So what I'll first do is I will dump my smalls out of my bag onto the ground. I'll just dump them in my fire pit. I like chaotic fire lays. And then I'm going to use this bag, which is a fairly water resistant canvas material, to process my bird nest or my tinder bundle. And to me, there's a difference between a bird nest and a tinder bundle. A lot of people confuse those two terms. To me, a bird nest is something that you are going to put an ember inside of to blow it to flame, like you would do with primitive fire from a bow drill or a hand drill, or even a magnifying glass with solar ignition where you created an ember for that matter. A tinder bundle is highly combustible material that you're going to place at the base of your fire, and you're going to ignite that by some other means. So what we're going to do today is we're going to process a tinder bundle. It's going to look very similar to a bird nest, but we're going to put it at the base of our fire. We're not going to blow it to life. We're going to ignite it. So let me get this poplar bark processed down into something that looks halfway decent. I'll reposition the camera and we'll work on these snowshoes. Alright, so we have an initial fire lay of smalls set up here. Again, chaotic is fine with me. I have a little bit of fuel over here, enough to sustain it while I go out and collect more. I'm in an area where there's lots and lots of dead pine. I can just walk around and break branches off, bring them back, break them off, bring them back until I need to set up for a longer term fire. The tinder bundle, again, is not a bird nest. It is full of bark. It's full of a lot of coarse material, lots of materials that I would not want in here if there were a bird nest that I were going to ignite by an ember. But we're going to ignite this by open flame from the magnesium, hopefully from our snowshoe. So I don't mind some of that more coarse material in there. In fact, I'm going to take advantage of it because I know it will ignite with open flame. So we're just going to take that tinder bundle and wrap it up kind of loose. And we're going to shove it up right there at the edge of the canopy of our fire lay, and not directly on the ground, because we're actually going to put a pan of material on the ground here to ignite this. That's our plan. The next thing that we're going to do is we're going to get something that we can collect some shavings into of magnesium. And we're just going to use the top of one of our bush pots for that. Then I've got my snowshoe, and you can see that there's no scrapings off of the snowshoe. This thing's brand new. It's got a little bit of paint on it, so I'm going to have to scrape through that. And we'll see what kind of shavings we can get off of this thing. Oh yeah, you can hear that. Again, the advantage of having that good 90-degree spine on your knife is the ability to do that. And you can shave a lot of stuff off of this snowshoe before you're ever going to hurt it any. Now you can see there's quite a few shavings in there, and I really didn't hardly make a dent in that snowshoe at all. There's a ton of fires in that snowshoe. Now anything that we've got here, we'll collect this up as well. That missed and got on our tarp, or our piece of canvas here, but you can see the shavings that I got off of that with my knife. Just beautiful. So we'll collect all of this up and put it in here as well in our tray. Now again, the intent of all of this is to effect ignition from our magnesium and ignite our tinder. And the reason I've got that magnesium in that catch basin there is really more than anything else just to keep it off the ground and keep it in one pile. And I've pretty much piled it in here right underneath that tinder bundle. And now I'm going to throw sparks in there and see what happens. all about patience. Patience, patience, patience. Feed from the outside in. Well, folks, I'm Dave Canterbury with the Pathfinder School. I thank you for joining me out here for another video today. I thank you for your support. I thank you for your views. I thank you for everything that you do for myself, for our school, for our family, for our business, for everyone associated with Self-Reliance Outfitters and the Pathfinder School. We'll be back with another educational video as soon as we can. Thanks, guys.